Okay, so the first thing that we need to understand is the structure of your Caribbean Studies exam. Your paper 2, which is what we're preparing for now, is 180 minutes long. Okay, that is 3 hours. And you are required to complete 4 essays in this time. The paper is marked out of 100 marks, and then it accounts for 33% of the total assessment. Remember, your paper 1, which is the multiple choice paper, and your IAs will account for the rest of the mark. Okay, so this essay, this paper 2 accounts for 33% of the total assessment. You want to score at least 30%. When I say 30%, if it's 33% of the whole of all 3, you want to go into that with at least 30%. I'm assuming that all of you did excellent IAs, and that will also sum up your overall grade. Now, the exam paper consists of 2 types of essay questions. Essays that are worth 20 marks and essays that are worth 30 marks. Okay? And they come from modules 1 and 2. And the paper is divided into 4 sections, and you must choose 1 question from each section. So you have, this is a breakdown of what it looks like according to your syllabus. Type A questions are 20 marks question, and it comes from module 1, section A and section B. Now, when I sent out that handout to you, when I emailed it, I had given you 35 minutes for that. But then I went back and I broke down the time, and I decided that you need 10 minutes at the beginning to just choose your questions and plan it out, which I'll come to in a bit. So you have 30 minutes to answer those 2 questions for 20 marks each. Okay? And then you have type B questions, which are 30 marks. And again, you're choosing, they come from module 1 and 2. Now, the type A questions, which are 20 marks. As I said, I worked it out that you will have 30 minutes to write an essay for 20 marks. These are the shorter essays, and they test a particular aspect of the topic. So when these essays come, you will see describe ways or explain how. And the marks are allocated as follows. For knowledge, you get 6 marks. For use of knowledge, you get 8 marks. And for inquiry and communication, you get 6 marks. And I am going to come back in a minute and look at what each of those mean. The second one is type B questions, which is 30 marks question. You have 55 minutes to complete one of that question. Okay, and these questions require exposition of the subject with command words such as discuss and evaluate and assess the extent to. And marks are allocated as follows: knowledge 10, use of knowledge 12, and inquiry and communication 8. And basically, the questions for 30 marks are asking you. Can you just mute your mic, please? Yeah, so basically the questions for 30 marks, they need you to go a little bit more than just narrating information or giving back information. They need to show that you can use the information in a critical, you can use the information in a manner that shows you understand the topic and you can discuss the topic, you can assess the topic. Okay, so it's more than just writing information. It's how you write, how you use the information that you know, and how you write it back in a critical way. So they're looking at what we refer to as critical thinking for the 30 marks with the type B essays. And as I said, I'll come to that. Okay, here it is. So the first thing that you tested on is knowledge. And if you look at the syllabus, knowledge and comprehension goes well hand in hand. So basically what that means is that you have to understand the facts, you have to understand concepts, you have to understand principles, you have to look at the processes and theories and so on that are covered by the syllabus. What does that mean? It means that if they give you a topic on sports, you actually have to have information about sports. You can't make up information as you go along. You have to have proper, solid facts which are relevant to the topic. Okay, So when we're talking about knowledge, we're talking about all that information that you would have learned when you were when you were doing each individual topic. So the information that you learned for sports, the information that you learned for regional integration, and so on. Okay. And the thing is, it's when you're talking about knowledge, you're not talking about how much you learn for the topic, but how you use what is relevant to the topic. So for example, if a question comes on sports, and I'm using sports as my example today most of the time because I think most of you would have looked at the video on sports, would have gone through that topic. So let's say a question comes on sports, and the question is about the impact of sports on Caribbean development. And you write a whole essay about cricket in Trinidad and Tobago, or cricket in Jamaica, or track and field in Jamaica. You have a lot of information, but the information is not answering the question that is asked. So when we talk about knowledge, we're talking about those information and facts that are relevant to the topic. So before you can even start to write an essay, you have to know about the topic. And that's where your classes would have come in. You may have completed it in your classes with your teachers. You may have completed on your own when you did research on it. Again, I am not assuming that you have done that. So to be on the safe side, I plan to go through all 4 topics with you today. Well, not today alone, but today and tomorrow. So we are focusing on knowledge 1, then the use of knowledge, which is very, very important. You would have noticed when I looked at the marks, the allocation of marks for both of them, you notice that use of knowledge has the highest allocation of marks. For the 20-mark questions, it's 8 marks, and for the type B question, it's 12 marks. So use of knowledge is one of the most important things in your essay. What does it mean? It means how do you use the information for the topic to answer the specific question that was asked? How do you use what you know about sports to answer a question on sports? Okay, how do you use your facts and your concepts and your principles? How do you organize the information on a basis for classification? That is, how do you write it back so that you can say, okay, one of the most important benefit of sports is its economic benefit. You know, how do you decide which points are more important than the other, and how do you put that back in an essay? So how do you apply facts and knowledge to answer the question asked? So you're not just writing every and anything you know about sports. You are writing, you are pulling out the information that you know, and you are applying it to the question that is asked. You're showing that, yes, I know my information, but I know how to use my information. I know, you know, I learned of 20 pages of information on sports. And when CXC brought this question, I really needed to just know 2 pages that I can use to answer this question. So that is what we mean by use of knowledge. Inquiry and communication basically is looking at your critical thinking skills. So you would notice again in the type B questions, in type B essay, inquiry and communication is 8 marks. Okay, and in the type A question, it accounts for 6 marks. What does it mean by inquiry and communication? Simply mean that you are required to analyze. You are required to use the sources in a manner that is relevant. That is inquiry. You can look at the relevant questions. You can ask the relevant questions. Is sports really important to the Caribbean? You know, is regional integration really something that can be achieved? So that is the kind of things that we're looking for. How do we use the information that you learned of? So when you probably did the topic with your teacher, or when you were doing your research, especially if you did the topic for your IA, you would have looked at different sources of material. You know, can you use any of those How can you use reports and case studies and surveys and scientific research and all that? And when I use those words, don't get confused and don't get scared. I simply mean the examples that you would give to support your points. Okay, so when we're talking about inquiry and communication, we're talking about the extent to which you are able to discuss and to analyze and to think through a topic. Okay, and the extent to which you can communicate that clearly in a logical, appropriate format. And that is the communication part. How do you put back the information that you know in a relevant, how do you use the information that you know, make it relevant to the question and put it back in a way that the examiner will understand and will be able to follow your argument or follow how you reason through whatever topic it is. So those are the things that we're looking for. And I want to say again, it's not about regurgitating information. When you're writing the essays for Caribbean studies, yes, when you're writing type A essays, it is more or less straightforward and you need to know the information and you could give back the information. But in both cases, the knowledge, use of knowledge, inquiry, and communication are all allocated different marks. So you need to be able to do both, do these things for both essays. You're not just regurgitating information, you're using the information that you know to write an essay in which you have a clear argument, fully supported by your points, that you can write in a very clear, grammatically correct format that an examiner would read and be totally blown away with and say, yes, this essay deserves an A. Okay, so over today and tomorrow, we will be doing a lot of essay planning and we will go through this and we will try to see how we can apply these three things: knowledge, use of knowledge, inquiry and communication, to our style of writing. And we will be coming back to it quite a lot. Now, essay structure. A good essay or a well-structured essay will have three parts: your introduction, your body, and your conclusion. And your introduction is one paragraph, and I want to tell you at this point that a paragraph is normally 8 to 10 sentences. A paragraph is not a whole page. A paragraph doesn't go on and on and on. Okay, you want one simple, straightforward paragraph, 8 to 10 sentences. What are you doing in your introduction? Depending on the topic, you might want to give some background information about the topic. So if the topic is assess the contribution of sports to Caribbean development, you might want to start out that essay by talking about, general things about sports, which are the sports that are prominent in the Caribbean, what is the role of sports in the Caribbean, something along that line. If you are given an essay that you have terms that you need to clarify, you might do that. For example, an essay on Caribbean integration. You might want to define what is meant by integration. Okay, so you give background information, you clarify your terms, but the most important sentence in your essay, in your introduction, is your thesis statement. And your thesis statement will basically say what you're going to do in the essay. And I always tell students that your introduction, you are going to say what you're going to do in the essay. In the body of the essay, you will do it. And then in the conclusion, you will come back and say, I have done X, Y, and Z. Okay, so when you write that thesis statement is one simple sentence. It's not going to be going on and on and on. Okay, it's simple and straightforward. So if you have a question saying, discuss the importance of sports to Caribbean development, your thesis statement can literally just reflect the question or repeat the question. This essay will discuss the importance of sports to Caribbean development. Or you might say something like, sports have played a very important role in Caribbean development, and this will be discussed. Something to that extent. So your thesis statement is simple and straightforward, and it is very, very important that you have a thesis statement that is clear, because let me tell you what, the examiner is going to read your introduction and they're going to look at your thesis statement, and then they're going to look at the rest of your essay and said, this point is saying what, is supporting the thesis statement. This point is supporting the thesis statement, and that's how they mark your essay. This point is well explained, because the problem too is if you don't have a good thesis statement, you will end up just writing information that is not really relevant to the question that is asked. So the thesis statement is very important to guide you in what goes in the introduction, in the body of your essay. Okay, and I always tell my students again that the first thing that you all should do when you go into that exam is you choose the questions that you're going to write, and you write your thesis statement. You take 10 minutes and you plan out your paper. How do you plan your paper? First, by writing your thesis statement for each of those and at least 3 or 4 points. So if at the end, coming to the end of the essay, you're running out of time and you can't remember what you were going to talk about in this particular question, you will have some points there to guide you. If after 2 hours you are so exhausted and you're really not thinking as sharp as you were at the beginning, you have some points there to guide you. And the thesis statement will help with that. So the thesis statement is very important. I also tell students to end their introduction with the thesis statement. Let that be the last sentence in your introduction. So then whatever comes after that speaks directly to the thesis statement. Okay, the body of the essay, as I said in the introduction, you're saying what I am going to do. In the body, you're actually going to do it. So in the body of your essay, you are going to have points to support your thesis statement. And each one of those points will start a new paragraph. And when you start in a new paragraph, the first sentence is what we call the topic sentence. Okay, what does that mean? It means that if in your introduction, your thesis statement was, let's use sports again, this essay will discuss the contribution of sports to Caribbean development. Your first point might be, sports has contributed immensely to the economic development of the Caribbean. That is your topic sentence. And then you go on to explain that. Okay, so that is the point you're making, and everything else in that paragraph is explaining that point. And I give you 2 sample essays to kind of give you an idea of what, how you structure it. So each topic sentence has to be supported with relevant information. Somebody had asked how long an essay should be. Now, again, it's not how much you write, it is what you write. Because you might end up writing and writing and writing, but it is not relevant. So you want that, you want for the shorter essays to at least have 4 to 5 main points, and you develop those points. You give your examples to support it, you explain it, and so on. For the longer essays, you should aim for at least 6 points. If you can get more and you can explain each one very well with examples, then you're good to go. Okay? Each point should be developed in at least 1 strong paragraph. If a point is, if there's so much information that you have for 1 point, or you have good examples and so on, that's fine. Just make it into 2 paragraphs. Just don't let the paragraph go on and on and on. Okay, split your paragraphs into your points into 2 paragraphs if you need to. And it's Caribbean studies, always give examples to support your points. Always, always give examples to support your points. Okay, you want to show that you are very aware of what is happening out there in the region. If you give examples, don't, if you want to play it safe and you didn't really read a lot on the topic, then use what you're familiar with. You're talking about sports, talk about sports in your country, that's fine. Okay, use examples that you are familiar with, but at the same time, by this stage, you should have at least, done some research or have gone through the topic so you could give other examples outside of your country. But if that's not the case, stick to your countries, that is okay. The conclusion would basically state what you have done in the essay. Again, one paragraph. To be very clear, you can go back, you can start that paragraph by saying, this essay have shown the ways in which sports is important to Caribbean development. And then you can say, it has shown that sports is important as it generates revenue, blah, blah, blah. You list all the things that you discuss in the body. And to close off, you can give some general information. Sports will continue to be important to Caribbean society and culture. It is something that, you know, many governments are trying to develop from a young age, things like that. Some general information to close off your essay. Okay, so if you structure your essay like that, you have a good, strong thesis statement, and you have your points have to be clearly stated and then explained fully with examples, and then you have a strong conclusion, you will get a good mark. You will do excellent. So you are using this to help you write your essays.